Okay, so everybody should be getting that prompt. And real quickly, let me formally introduce Rachel. Rachel Sumekh is the founder and CEO for Swipe Out Hunger, and this is the leading organization in the United States for addressing hunger among college students. Her work has been recognized at the Obama White House and in the New York Times, and landed her on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Swipe Out Hunger began in 2010 with a few friends as a college project at UCLA while she was an undergrad. And they have taken a really innovative approach, allowing college students, and it's expanded to faculty and staff, to donate their unused funds from their meal plans to help other students who are facing food insecurity issues. In 2017, Swipe Out Hunger was called upon to author a piece of legislation to address college student hunger, and the state of California adopted that legislation and has put over $50 million behind it. Since then, that legislation has been replicated in New Jersey and has been introduced in Maryland and Pennsylvania, and it'd be really awesome to get the momentum building in Texas as well. So today, Rachel's going to visit with us about how they got Swipe Out Hunger started. And in that conversation, talk a little bit about how she evolved as a leader through that process. And then what I'm really curious about is how she's managed her self-care when you start taking on something that's kind of bigger than yourself. So with that, again, I'm going to turn it over, and thank you, Rachel. We're really excited.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It is such a pleasure to be able to at least be in the Zoom room with you all. I mentioned when we first connected that I fortunately have been to Denton before. I'm currently based out of Los Angeles, which is where I'm from. But I remember being there and people telling me, you know, Austin thinks that they're the real weird city in Texas, but it's actually Denton. And so I think it's called Keep Denton Beard. I don't know, I was taught many weird things to absorb about Denton. And so it's such a pleasure to be here, and so appreciative of the many departments that came together. I think the lens on wellness makes so much sense, Michelle, as you said. I'm excited to talk about Swipe Out Hunger's work, both about the work that we do to actually address hunger and make sure that students have their basic wellness needs met, their basic needs. Also, the journey of being an entrepreneur and what that means mentally, emotionally, physically, and in all the ways. So thank you all for spending this afternoon on the Zoom room with us. I hope to one day come visit and have one of you pick me up at the airport, and we'll go get a bite somewhere and get a campus tour. I miss it so much. But yeah, as I mentioned, my hope today is to share a bit more about Swipe Out Hunger. And as mentioned, we're a national nonprofit committed to ending college student hunger. Nationally, there are 1 in 3 students across the country that are food insecure. It's a pretty shocking number, but once you remember that in our country, 30 million students rely on their meals every day from their elementary school, middle school, and high school, from kindergarten through 12th grade, it shouldn't be so surprising that those same students, when they get to college, will be food insecure. I remember being a kid and having the little yellow free, they're yellow in California, like lunch tickets to go in and get that meal. And so these programs are really essential. But I want to kick this off with some trivia. I want you all to jump in the chat and tell me how many colleges in the US you think have a food pantry or a food closet on them. All right, 75%. There's about 3,000 colleges. I don't know what the exact percentage is, so give me number of schools. So if there's 3,000 colleges, and if you include the community colleges, okay, 2,000, 100, 300, 1,000, 1,400, 5. Great, we're getting some great guesses. When I ask students, they always guess the more optimistic numbers, which I love. We should always stay optimistic and idealistic. Paige, you got really close there. Oh no, wait, Amber Barker, you really hit the nail on the head. There's a little over 750 colleges and universities that have food pantries and food closets on them, which, while it's not all of the colleges, or not even half, The fact that we have gotten to the point where our colleges and universities are creating a dedicated space, are sourcing enough food to stock a food closet, I think says something about the state of where we are today. Because 20 years ago, there was maybe 5. And one of the things I want to lift up is that previously we used to rely on local churches, community centers, the local food bank for students to go and get resources. But we've gotten to the point now where we've recognized that to address college student hunger is going to take much different solutions than what it's taken in the past to address this issue. We hope that more organizations step up and start to address college student hunger. But until then, we are proud to be a nonprofit that does 3 things. Our work is focused on on-campus solutions. So our key program is the Swipe Drive, where we allow students to donate the extra money from their meal plans to other students on campus that are hungry. But we also help schools do things like SNAP enrollment. Who wants to throw in the chat or unmute and tell me what SNAP is? Not Snapchat. Food stamps. Thank you, Caitlin. The artist formerly known as food stamps, we now call SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program that helps even college students, right? You can get up to $100, $200 a month on a debit card to be able to go to the grocery store and get access to meals. It's an amazing program. And I'm going to throw out a bit more trivia. I hate trivia. I think it gets me so stressed out and anxious, but I love hunger trivia. So bear with me. This is the last one I'm going to ask. Is when we think about the programs that our communities, our country runs that help address hunger, the first thing that comes to my mind is Feeding America, right? Food banks in our cities that have, like, you know, we've seen during the pandemic, the massive lines out the door of people lined up getting food. All across our country, we have Food Bank America sites that address hunger. We have programs like Swipe. We have programs like Meals on Wheels, all these nonprofits that are doing meal service. And then we also have government programs like SNAP, which I mentioned, like WIC, which helps women and families, like TANF. There's a bunch of public benefits programs as well that give families funds for things like meals. So if you were to take all of the meals that our nonprofits serve, right? I mentioned Feeding America's, all the food banks, Swipe programs, all of the nonprofits, and you were to put all of those meals into grocery bags, and you were to take all of the meals that programs like SNAP and WIC and food stamps, all these programs that they provide, how many of those bags, if you had them all in a room together, would be funded? Let's say there's 10 bags in total. How many of those bags would be funded by government programs? And how many of those bags would be filled by nonprofit programs? Does the question make sense? Basically, how many bags is who filling up? And this time you can do percentages because it's 1 out of 10, or like, 10%. So 50%, all right. 10%. Tell me which percent, 75% nonprofit, 30% government. All right, these are some good guesses. Yeah. Amazing. These are some solid 2 by the government, 8 from nonprofits, 10% from government. All right, I will tell you guys that 10% of the bags, 1 out of 10 would be filled by nonprofits. 90% of them come from the government. So the government plays a huge role, and federal funding and state funding play a huge role in addressing hunger in our communities. So another element of my talk today will be focused on why advocacy and policy really matter. Whatever side of the spectrum you're on politically, these dollars are being spent, and it's important for us as advocates to have an eagle eye on how these programs are being funded, where these dollars are going, and making sure that they're actually making a difference in people's lives. And so I'll speak a bit about Swipe Out Hunger's work around advocacy and the importance of having students such as yourselves at the front lines testifying and making asks around this issue. So with that, I'm going to ask to become a co-host so I can share a few slides. I'm going to try and keep this like as slide light as possible Thank you so much. We do not receive government funding, mostly because I do not want to deal with any government forms or grants. We're all privately funded. All right. So as I mentioned, 1 in 3 college students are food insecure. Going to jump to the next slide. So this is back in 2010, which is now 10 and a half years ago, when my co-founder Brian and I started Swipe Out Hunger at UCLA. I'll speak to why we're standing next to boxes of food. And now, so proud to say that we're in 130 universities across 40 states in this country. And what I'm most proud about is that almost all of these sites were started by college students, are still run by college students, students who said, I have friends who are going hungry, or I'm going hungry, and I can't be on a campus where that's not acknowledged, where we're not doing something about it. So our work has been able to grow to 130 campuses. We've served 2 million meals to date, and we've passed over $50 million in legislation to address student hunger. And I want to take us back to that picture of me and Brian standing at those boxes of food that was in a basement at UCLA. So I'm very proud. I don't know if anyone watches basketball, but we just made it to the Final Four last night, big win against Michigan. But I have not always been proud of my campus. When we started Swipe Out Hunger in 2010, it was me and my friends who had extra money on our meal plans. And all the money, who has ever had meal swipe dollars go to waste, right? I know TW is a big community campus, so maybe not everyone, but if you have a meal plan and if you don't use all of those meal swipes by the end of the semester, those dollars are completely non-refundable. The average cost of a meal plan is somewhere around $5,000. It's a lot of money. And so me and my friends decided that it made sense for us to go in the dining hall, buy food in to-go boxes, and hand it out to people who we saw were hungry. Went really well. The next day, we put a table outside the dining hall, and we asked other students to go inside, buy boxes of food to go and bring it out to our table. By the end of the day, we had a mountain of white styrofoam boxes. This is back when styrofoam was still on campus, before compostable and non-reusable and all of this. And one of the people who worked in our dining hall, a manager, came out, saw what we were doing, and smashed one of the to-go boxes and said, "This is not happening on my campus, stop immediately." And I went from being this kid who grew up in the Valley, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, right? Suburban kid, child of immigrants. I had never made anyone uncomfortable in my entire life. I was very shy, quiet, reserved, respected authority. And now here's this person who supposedly has a title of a manager, who is an authority of my campus, telling me that I can't do something that's supposed to be helping people on my campus. It made no cognitive sense for me. I'm like, wait, these are my meal swipes. I want to help people. And something triggered in me. And I'm sure people have heard of the quote that the rules were written by people no smarter than you. I started to realize that some of the rules around me didn't make sense. And we have a lot of administrators on the line, faculty on the line. And so I'll say it's not that the school wanted to be malicious. A university is a huge infrastructure, bureaucratic thing. One cog goes off, who knows the impacts. And so they were just designing a meal plan model that worked for them, that was sustainable, that was predictable. And they didn't realize the impact it was having on students. So me and my friends decided, we're going to help them out and help them design a more effective model. So we put on our nicest business clothes and we went for a few months for a series of meetings with administrators. And we eventually developed our new model. Instead of us going in the dining hall, buying meals to go and handing it out to people, we got UCLA to allow us to move those dollars electronically. So now the way the model works, and we'll dive more into this in our session later today about Swipe Out Hunger technically, is students will come by one of our tables or go to our form online and say they want to donate their dining dollars. The university will then go in the back end and move the same dollar amount from their fund into a centralized bank, a meal bank is what we call it. And then we'll set up an application process for any student that is food insecure to be able to apply for meals and it happens pretty easily typically. And then funds are transferred from one student's account by the card office onto the account of another student. And it's a way better model than styrofoam boxes where you had to give it to someone within a few hours. Now we have this meal bank that we can spread throughout the year. So I would love to pause on that just real quick of this lesson of being able to, if I thought as an 18-year-old that first model of a program was the best way to do something, that styrofoam boxes are the way, I would have never been open and receptive to this much better idea that our administrators had that helped our program really grow and succeed. And so I'd love to share that if you think the first version, the first iteration of your idea is the best version you're gonna have, you're selling yourself short. By bringing people in together, collaboration, bringing different ideas to mind, and I mean, this is Texas Women's University, and I'll say that women are typically far more collaborative, and I think collaboration leads to more ideas coming to the center. And so really owning that part of our leadership style really allows for ideas to bloom and grow. So be attached to your mission, not to your own idea, right? Be focused on the goal, not so much there. And I see a question from Valerie. Does this work when you have a maximum amount of daily swipes? Tell me more about what do you mean by maximum amount of daily swipes? Like you have the largest meal plan?
My daughter's in college and she's only allowed 2 to 3 swipes per day. She gets the maximum of 2 swipes. She had a ton of money left over at the end that went to waste, and I noticed that was a problem too. But with her max amount of swipes, she wouldn't have had the option to get extra to give it out.
Yeah, well, she could have given away her own extra swipes. So even if we've even worked with campuses that have unlimited meal swipes every day, so anyone can be able to donate their swipes.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Of course. And so this notion that the first version of our idea of working with UCLA was going to be the best one, really came to light when we started to collaborate and see what else was possible. Okay, I'm going to go back to screen sharing real quick. And so Swipe Out Hunger's work has 3 key pillars. The first, as I mentioned, is our on-campus solutions, helping to start swipe drives on campus, helping to have SNAP enrollment happen. Now, there's staff on campus that can enroll students in SNAP. Student empowerment is the second element. I went, as I mentioned, from being, I think I put a photo, this like shy, quiet, nerdy kid who had braces up until like high school to becoming a vocal leader because I had the chance to flex my leadership skills. And so we want that for every student, the chance to understand that they are powerful, that they have power, and their community needs them. So we have a student summit every year. We fly our students out to LA and they collaborate, or we have digital conferences now. We have monthly sessions where students you can sign up on our website, type in your email address, and you'll get our monthly swipe sessions where you'll learn about different issues in student leadership. And then finally, the third pillar of our work is policy and advocacy. I love Swipe Out Hunger, but we are not going to swipe out hunger in this country. Like swipes are not the way. It's going to take larger systemic change. And so we always have a policy lens to the work that we do. And love to just close this real quick. Tell me who on this call, I'm sure you all came for different reasons. Is anyone on the call involved with any basic needs work, whether it's supporting students, food security, mental health, emotional health? Like, is anyone on the call involved in any basic needs work on campus? Or has anyone been a beneficiary? That's even a better perspective to bring, seeing the programs on campus. Awesome. Cindy, involved in mental health. Amazing. No Kid Hungry is such an important organization. Yeah, I mean, the intersection of nutrition here is critical. The care office assists students with basic needs. Has anyone been to the care office before? It's an amazing place if you haven't been yet. There's amazing staff who helped make this happen. So they're clearly committed. Today a report came out from the Hope Center, which is the leading institute on food insecurity, college affordability, you name it. They are the leaders on it. And they surveyed over 200,000 students across the country. And they found that 50% of students that needed help didn't ask for any help because they didn't know that resources were on their campus. So there's such a huge wealth of resources on our campus that we simply don't know are available to us because, one, no one wants to open every email you get, nevertheless read the email. It's so hard to get the word out. And then there's stigma associated with asking for help, right? We don't want to talk to our friends about it. We don't want to bring it up with a professor. And then marketing, right? Well, not every university department has an epic graphic design team. So many challenges that prevent us from being able to really get students the resources that they need. So go check out the care center, care office, and get the resources that you need. I want to focus real quick on the mental health element as well. And I actually just closed this tab of a video I wanted to play. One sec. This is your moment to take a deep breath on the topic of mental health. If you haven't taken a deep breath or two today, I think two is always the way to go. All right. Okay. So
thank you.
This is Emily Hinton. She is an amazing advocate. She is now a member of the SWIPE team, and I'm going to play a quick video from her for all of us to listen to real quick.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Emily Hinton. I am a third-year student at Sonoma State University, majoring in philosophy and political science and minoring in criminal justice. I also serve as the Associated Student Body President. I sit on 13 committees. I'm taking 18 units, and I serve as a voting member for our CSSA Board of Advisors. The students and the rest of the Sonoma State population see me as someone who is successful, as someone who is a leader, someone who has my life together. What they don't know is that over the summer, before serving as our student body president this year, I lived out of my car, and the best week of my summer vacation was the week where all the ASI presidents had the opportunity to attend the Panetta Institute for Public Policy. And that wasn't my favorite week of the summer because of the experiences I had, but because for a week long I had a secure meal and didn't have to worry about where I was going to sleep that night. What students don't know is that I'm a first-generation low-income college student, and that I work 20 extra hours a week as a full-time nanny and part-time at a yogurt shop. I've been homeless 4 times in my life. What they don't know is that I'm a sexual assault survivor and that I deal with mental illness, and some days it is extremely difficult to get out of bed. But I get out of bed and I serve as their student body president so I can advocate for affordable and accessible higher education for those students who can't work 3 jobs as I do and who can't get out of bed. So I'm here today just to support AB 214, and I want to thank Dr. Wepper for all of your efforts in this, because it really does make a difference in the lives of students as myself. Thank you.
So Emily's story is incredibly powerful. I think one of the main reasons why is because looking at her and hearing the first part of her story, student body president, serves on multiple committees, you would never guess what her path was getting there or what her experience is now. And that is the main challenge with college student hunger and hunger in general. It's very hard to see. And so breaking the stigma, talking about the ways that our communities can show up for our students by campus culture change, by providing resources, is truly essential. I also wanted to share that because it's so important for us to have the voices of students in the room with us when we talk about these issues. As you all likely know, you can tell your experience far better than anyone else can. Happy to report that Emily has now taken her LSAT. She's on her way to law school. It's totally killing it. And so when we think about issues like this, whether we're talking about college student hunger, any of you who want to go into the nonprofit or social impact space, we think about, vulnerable populations. I don't think that college students are vulnerable. I think you all are like super resilient, right? The fact that you're facing these challenges on top of the regular anxieties and costs and stressors of being a college student, and you're still showing up to class every day on Zoom, nevertheless, is the most incredible story of resilience I've ever seen. And I think we have to have that lens with everyone that we serve, that the people who are showing up to benefit from our programs, people who are showing up to contribute in various ways, are truly maximizing the assets that they have. They're strategic and thoughtful. And so with that, I will go back to sharing a few more slides real quick, and really talking about what is the leadership journey that we're all on. What does it mean to tell an effective story? And so would love if someone actually was able to read this slide. I know our faces might be blocking it, so I'm gonna actually keep it small, because that's easier, right? Sometimes the Zoom boxes get in the way. So can someone unmute and help me read this?
How do we recapture that power of public narrative and learn the art of leadership storytelling? A leadership story is a story of self, a story of why I've been called. Some people say, I don't want to talk about myself, but if you don't interpret to others your calling and your reason for doing what you're doing, do you think it will just stay uninterpreted? No, other people will interpret it for you. You don't have any choice if you want to be a leader. You have to claim authorship of your story and learn to tell it to others so they can understand, the values that move you to act, because it might move them to act as well.
Thank you, Janine. I was gonna ask, does this resonate with anyone? And I feel like the answer is yes for you. Thank you so much for reading. This is an essay by Marshall Gans, who's a professor at the Harvard Kennedy School. And if you ask me, is one of the godfathers of community organizing. I want to hear if anyone wants to throw in the chat or unmute and share any part of this that resonates with them.
For
We
me,
have,
oh, sorry, someone else.
no, go ahead.
Okay. For me, the part that really stood out was people will kind of interpret your story for you if you're not authoritative about who you are and understand who you are as a person. For me, that's really big just because, I mean, I've always wanted to be a leader and I like to lead. It just scares me sometimes because I'm worried about what people will think. But this kind of made me realize, like, I shouldn't be worried about what people think, because if I'm secure in myself, then they can't really dictate, where I go and what I do.
Thank you, Prisha. I think that's spot on. The notion of, you can't control what people think. They're gonna think something anyway. So you might as well share something that you want them to think about you, right? And this notion that, they're gonna think something, and the news is that, I'm gonna ask, like, do we have something to say? Yeah, we have a story to tell. We have something to say. Thank you for sharing, Prisha, and thank you again, Janine. What else stands out to folks?
I appreciate just like the being able to describe something that means something to you and that has value to you can really bring that up in someone else as well. So you sharing your story can bring up something in someone else that will allow them to share theirs.
Spot on. After I read this essay for the first time a few years ago, I started to listen to the stories that people would tell me, leaders that I admired, people that I called my mentors, people I didn't like, also people whose leadership I didn't admire. And I listened for what values is this person telling through the stories that they share. Are they telling me stories that invoke fear, that invoke, like some sort of insecurity? And is that making me feel more fearful and more insecure? Or are they telling me stories where they were hopeful, where they gave other people hope? Are they telling me stories that had me realize that they are a person with integrity? And if everyone wants to just think about that, spend the next few days, I'm gonna put this on myself of listen to the stories that I tell you today. What values will you be left with about who I am by the end of our session together? And that'll help us understand how we too can tell stories as activists, as advocates, as students, as whatever lens or identity that you're walking into a room with to speak out on an issue. How do you make sure that you're spending the time that you're speaking, telling stories that convey your values? Because that is how you will galvanize others to join in your cause, to be able to also step in and say, I also believe in justice, or I also believe that everyone should have access to kale because I love kale too, right? Whatever it is, that's how we move others as well. Gonna take a look at the chat. Yeah, the insecurity, yeah, sometimes we're worried that people will judge us, that people, because we don't think they are special enough or have enough to offer, which is false. We all are special and have the ability to make. Absolutely. Who am I? I'm not special. I'm just a person who decided to open my mouth enough times that I've learned what to say, right? So I say I'm not special to say that we are all special, right? There's no such thing as more or less valuable story to tell. One quick piece of advice, kind of through the lens of self-care, is when I used to go to events and I did a lot of just networking or any event I would walk into the room for, I used to sit in my car a moment before I walked in and would say to myself, I am a badass and anyone would be lucky to hear my story. And I had to sometimes say it 2 times to remind myself that any room I walked into, I didn't have to wait for someone to approach me. I could approach someone and just start talking about, pretend I'm giving a keynote on the spot, right? Just be able to engage with folks in a way that my story wasn't something I had to wait to share. I could just share whenever I was ready to share it with someone, whenever they are worthy, because my story is important and valuable. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for indulging me in this. And I want to now, where are my slides? Talk about the importance of doing this in what spaces do we want to be doing this work? What spaces do we want to be telling these stories? And one of the ones with Swipe Out Hunger has always been, as I mentioned, our advocacy work. And so we introduced a bill called the Hunger-Free Campus Bill. I'll stop sharing for a sec. The Hunger-Free Campus Bill allows colleges to receive thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes over $100,000 to fund anti-hunger work on their campus. And the way that this happened was an administrator at UC Santa Barbara out in California ran for office and she won. She was elected to the state legislature. And when she got elected, she called me and said, I saw the way that your program, your meal swipes, helped our students. And so I want you to help me write a bill that would take your program onto every college in California. I said, that is amazing, but my program doesn't really help community college students, and that's where so basically helped her write 2 different bills that were far more effective. She chose one of them, and that bill became known as the Hunger-Free Campus Bill, where students on campuses would, if a school had 3 things, they were eligible for this funding. If a school had a meal plan, and they gave students a chance to donate their swipes, even if it was let them donate 1,000 swipes in total, whatever it was, just start a program. Second was if they had a food pantry on campus or some sort of food pop-up. And third was if they had at least one staff member on campus who was enrolling students in SNAP. And so if campus had these three things, then they would be eligible to receive funds to help fund their work. So I can throw those slides back up for our more visual learners. But there's three key components to the program. And after the bill was introduced, we were able to go up to Sacramento, our state capital, testify, and eventually have the bill pass. I'd love to take a moment to talk about, do I have the slide in here? Yeah, how a state legislature works. First, there's an idea, a bill is introduced by someone in the state, and just saying this is specifically for the state, not federally, right? If the bill has to do with a certain issue, such as education or higher ed, it'll go to the higher ed committee. If it has to do with direct services of sorts. Oh, sorry, can you guys not see the presentation? One sec. Nope. Okay, I'm just gonna not share for a sec. Cool. And it goes to the committee associated with that bill. If that committee, which is made up of state legislators, likes the bill, they'll say, we like this bill, let's move it on to the next committee, which is appropriations. If there's a dollar amount tied to it, then folks on the budget committee also have to say, we too like this bill, we're gonna allocate some dollars towards it. And if the budget committee likes it, then it goes to the floor in one house. And then in the other house, you go through the same thing. And if both houses and all of their committees that are related approve the bill, then it becomes a state bill. It's actually, I made it sound a little simple, I hope. And it actually is that simple. The chances of a bill being introduced really just have to do with the fact of a committee choosing to have that bill heard and passing it through. So I'm so thrilled to say that our Hunger-Free Campus bill has now been passed in California, has sent over $54 million to California schools. And just this week, it was passed in Maryland. And this legislative cycle, it's been introduced in Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Minnesota. It is just on fire, right? I know Texas is a little purpley, but this is a bipartisan issue. It's hunger, and it's like college students are working hard to address hunger. So I'm hopeful that one of you will call one of your state reps and be like, hey, just heard about this. That's how it happened in New York. Someone just called their state senator and said, I like this bill, and the senator said, okay, I'm going to introduce it. So there's such, you may have seen the next slide that I had of our students. These are a number of our students who, let me move this. A number of our students in Minnesota meeting with, this is actually with the federal senator, Tina Smith's office, just saying, this is our experience as college students. This is what we hear from our friends. And here are ways that you can actually be advocates for us. A lot of people want to support students, but they just don't know exactly how. They don't have a roadmap. And the good news is that college students have a lot of ideas. And if any of you are particularly interested in getting more involved, you can go to swipehunger.org/advocacy and /toolkit, sorry, swipehunger.org/toolkit, and get links to all of these amazing ways that you can step up. Everything from how to understand your political landscape to diversity, equity, and inclusion lens through this work, storytelling for advocacy. And I see in the chat, how can we advocate on a federal level to address food insecurity? Oh man, this is one of my favorite questions. Who here has ever heard of the Farm Bill? It's a piece of legislation, oh, Maggie knows. It's a piece of legislation that we vote on every 5 years. And it is billions of dollars. Mostly it's subsidies for farms, so that farms, like mostly agricultural things like corn and so on, have subsidies. But it also has billions of dollars for programs like SNAP. And so what we can do at the federal level is, as we approach 2023, in 2 years, we'll have the next farm bill up for discussion, and people are already starting to negotiate for what's going to happen in the farm bill. If you want to advocate specifically for college students, one of the most draconian laws that we have is a college student, even if they're eligible for SNAP based on their income, they have to also prove that on top of being a student, on top of being broke, that they also work 20 hours a week. So most students work 20 hours a week, but the headache of having your pay stubs and proving that over and over again every 3 months is quite the burden. Nevertheless, that rule shouldn't exist for college students. So the Farm Bill is a moment where we can take that rule out, since it's a federal law. And we can also advocate to have SNAP dollars increased. Right now, during the pandemic, SNAP was increased by 15%, which is a lot of money for people who count their dollars. And so how do we make those changes permanent? This is all advocacy that we can be doing now, asking our Congress to take all of the SNAP exemptions that we had during the pandemic and making them permanent. All right, I'm going to take us back to another part of Marshall Ganz's teachings. And I'm going to ask if someone else could share. Oh, thank you for that link, Amy. If you have not applied for SNAP before and you think you might be eligible, there's no reason why you shouldn't. It's literally a debit card for groceries. Cool. Does someone want to unmute and read this for me?
I'll read it. Communities get organized because there are people among them who are skilled organizers, who are skilled leaders. Leadership is about enabling others to achieve purpose in the face of uncertainty. When there's certainty, when you know what to do, you don't need leadership. It's when you don't know what to do that the art and creativity of leadership matters. It matters even more in enabling others to work together to achieve a common purpose in the face of uncertainty.
All right. How does that make people feel? I think the word that stands out to me here is uncertainty. It's a word that we have all become quite familiar with, right? Are we going to be back on campus in the fall? Am I going to be able to get married next month? Is this person able to come over? Like, so much is uncertain right now. We have all sat in this for a long time.
To me, what stands out is the idea of it being creative, and because it is uncertain, it's like, as a leader, you don't really have to have it all figured out, because you're kind of guessing and you're going into something that's uncertain. It's just sometimes just the act of moving forward and kind of learning it along the way. So yeah, I like the creative part of that statement.
I always gravitate to the art and creativity piece as well, Michelle, because when you think about business books, you don't think about creativity and art being a part of what leadership looks like. But this is, again, the godfather of community organizing, a brilliant human who says, when you know what to do, you don't need leadership. It's when you don't know what to do that the art and creativity of leadership matters. It's whenever we say, the rule book, what happened in the past is no longer relevant, right? I don't need the certainty of someone coming up and saying, we have our plan together, status quo is going to continue. You need someone who's going to come together and say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I trust that we will develop the right committees, that we'll have the right plans in place, we'll be galvanized together and work on this. Someone who says that this does not happen before. So I'm not going to tell you what's going to be the right answer here, but I'm going to be committed to making sure that we figure it out together. And what about the second piece here, that it matters even more in enabling others to work together to achieve a common purpose in the face of uncertainty? Oh, and I'm loving the comments in the chat. It's like the art of creativity is the uncertainty. Absolutely. Allowing yourself to be flexible too as a leader. Yeah, letting that be a part of your creative process. Absolutely.
Maybe also like being a leader is about allowing others to kind of step up to that role as well, especially during uncertainty, just getting all those creative juices flowing and hearing things from other people as well, instead of just taking charge on your own.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if anyone else here is type A and thinks that they have to have the answer to everything all the time and it needs to be perfect. Newsflash, things are so much better when we talk to other people about them. Once you get into a spiral of like, I need to figure this out, I mean, I immediately call my brother and I'm like, I'm spiraling. I think I need to have an answer here. And he just like knocks me out of it. So not only does talking to other people help us not get caught up that we have to have all the solutions, but by bringing people together, we actually can develop the right answers and have the people in place with buy-in to put that plan into action. Yeah. And I mean, the other thing I'll say is like, this is how you build strong communities. As it says at the top, communities get organized because there are people among them who are skilled organizers, right? An organizer isn't just a dictator. It's someone who organizes people towards a common goal. And that person knows that in order for us to be successful, I have to ask you, what do you think? Where do you think we should be going? And so being able to have that piece of skilled organization is so important. From Mitershi, I'm probably, please unmute and fix how, if I need to fix how we said your name. Leaders will always push, go ahead.
It's pronounced Miteshri, Miteshri.
Miteshri, thank you.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Leaders will always push others to work together to achieve the greater good. Yeah, right. I think as a young leader, I sometimes would say, I don't like the way that that person or that organization or whoever it is leads, because maybe they have a different perspective than me. Maybe they're on a different side of some political aisle or a different philosophy on leadership than me, and I don't want to work with them. But an effective leader is able to find the common ground and have people centered and focused around what are we trying to accomplish together. And you quickly realize that once you put the issue at the center, people whose egos, even our own egos, typically were blinding us from the opportunity to work together, suddenly are like, yeah, like this makes sense. And for you, we're all still so early. And I mean, I'm like 29 now, so I'm much older, but we're still so early in our careers. We're going to get to the point where we can't choose who's at the table with us. When you're in a workplace or in a committee or in some way working with folks, that you can't choose who's at the table. So at this point, working with people who have different perspectives, have different skills, different leadership philosophies, is just preparation for when you get to those big tables and you have to work with people and you can't decide who's at the table. It's all training. Awesome. So I've got a couple more slides and then would love to open it up for conversation on these topics. This is one that someone sent to me after I gave a pitch back when we did in-person events. And someone came up and gave me this note card that said, most innovative ideas come from existing practices or resources treated in new ways. And I believe you hit the mark. When we hear the word innovative, we often think of like something that fell out of space, something that's never been heard of before, something completely out of nowhere. But real innovation is the ability to see things around you, everyday things, in new ways. It's seeing your meal swipes as a mechanism for ending hunger in your community. It's seeing, a sidewalk where people are throwing trash on the ground to saying like, let me put a compost bin here. It's like seeing spaces around us, seeing resources and treating them in new ways. And this quote reminded me of something that the founder of the founder of social entrepreneurship said, Bill Drayton, that social entrepreneurs are not content just to give fish or teach how to fish, right? We've all heard this saying of don't give a man a fish, teach a man how to fish. Bill Drayton says, social entrepreneurs are not content just to give fish or teach how to fish. They will not rest until they revolutionize the fishing industry. What if we actually ask the question, why didn't this person have fish from the beginning? And what do I do to make sure that everyone has access to that fish? Because I will tell you that I do not want my kids having to start nonprofits to address the issue of hunger. I think that we live in a society where we're smart enough, we have the resources enough to solve these issues by asking that next level question, by evolving from we have to give people fish today because people are hungry, 100%. Our food banks are saving lives every day. And we also need to be teaching people how to fish. But if people are not also having the conversation around how do we revolutionize the fishing industry, right? Hunger is not a problem of not enough food, right? Who wants to tell me all of the things that lead to someone being hungry? Throw them in the chat or unmute. I'll start us off. Yeah, great. So it's a lot of, the number one reason why someone goes hungry is their job doesn't give them enough money or they don't have a job, right, to be able to buy food. So how do we make sure that there are enough equitable jobs, that people have the training they need for those good jobs, that people live in zip codes where they have food, where they have healthy food, the social determinants of health. There's so much that is going towards the issue of hunger. And so I feel like if we take it back a few more levels, we'll be able to actually start addressing this issue. I don't want to have a conversation about hunger and not bring in all the things that lead us here. It's why policy work is important. It's why being able to have honest conversations with each other are important, and building from there. So with that, I will also throw contact info in the chat for anyone who wants to stay in touch, but I'll give everyone a sec to think of either questions you have, comments about anything I've said, anything that you have as your own leadership philosophies or activist philosophies you want to share. And then I have another prompt that I'll save for the end, but yeah, I wanted to open it up to folks. And also anything I said you have questions on or didn't resonate, that you want to dive into a bit more. Me too, Kaylee, me too.
Rachel, as they are thinking about their questions that they want to ask or comments that they want to make, can you also speak to, so you started this as an undergrad, and I know that when we talked earlier, you really didn't go into college thinking that you were going to come out the other end and be this like nonprofit entrepreneur, and just kind of that evolution. And yeah, and in the meantime, how do you take care of yourself in the middle of all of that?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Clearly, it's something that self-care is something that has to be constantly reminded. We each have to be reminded of it. I'm sure we each follow Instagram accounts that remind us of that to take care of ourselves. I will say that at first, in my early 20s, when I started, I was working an insane number of hours every week. I was not taking care of myself. I had bought into the story that I had to be a startup founder who was just working all the time and it was my life. That was not very sustainable or smart, right? You should be able to manage and say, what are my goals? What am I trying to accomplish? And not just sit at a computer and work for 10 hours straight, trying to find something that you don't know what you're even looking for. So I think for me, it became a matter of prioritizing my work session, saying, this is going to be a 2-hour work session, or this is going to be a 5-hour work session, and I'm going to schedule breaks for myself in between. So it just became a matter of making sure I created structure to my working style. And being able to know, I didn't get into yoga until last year. The election anxiety really just gave me the opportunity to get into a new type of workout. And so I think every couple months I have a different way of like physically finding ways to feel grounded. I do a lot of meditation every day. I really believe in the power of a deep breath. Yoga, sometimes it's boxing. Usually it's boxing for me. I need to like punch something to feel the release. Sometimes I have to, do a downward dog to feel the release. And the other piece is, one of the most helpful things has been having people in my life who, even if they don't understand what I'm doing, create space for me. For me, it's my sister and one of my coworkers. They understand the pressure that I'm under, and they just create space for me to talk about what I'm going through. And sometimes my sister asks stupid questions. I'm like, that's not the right question to ask me right now. But I just appreciate having the space to unpack and feel heard and seen and share what I'm going through. Because it's very easy for me to think that I'm supposed to keep these to myself. Yeah, so many little things that make the biggest difference. I see this question from Prisha about how this is a misunderstood issue. Yeah, when I talk about 1 in 3 college students going hungry, I'm often met with skepticism. People who don't believe that the problem is real, or that they've romanticized that you're supposed to survive on ramen noodles. And so a big part of my job is understanding, well, what was their college journey? If you have the time and the patience, understand why they might have that perspective. And oftentimes those were people themselves who survived on ramen and beans and rice, and saying, you're amazing for doing that. And it was hard for you. I'm sure you could have, joined a club, been on a sports team, done other things if you didn't have to have that stress. And so we want to make sure that no one else has to go through that trauma, that experience again. We want to build a future where that's not holding students back anymore. And if someone doesn't get it, that's fine. I think the stories are really, that's why I share Emily's story. It's why we have to know our own stories. It's why we have to know the stories of people around us and be able to bring those into the picture so that people understand the various elements. And sometimes you can't tell the whole picture, right? As we went through that list, there's a lot of reasons why people are food insecure. And sometimes you just got to pick 1 or 2 lenses for the sake of the goal, and trust that in future conversations, we might be able to share more. Shout out to Thich Nhat Hanh in the chat. Absolutely. So much wisdom in Buddhism and Tao philosophies. Thank you for this question. A lot of rejection. How did I make myself heard as someone who had now such great ideas? At first, I remember at one point we were working with a very large company, and the company was not being nice, right? Because they're a for-profit company. Their objective is not to end student hunger. Their objective is to make money, but they're trying to also end hunger. And I remember getting so worked up in these negotiations, and one of my mentors saying to me, Rachel, you're taking this all so personally. This has nothing to do with you or your ideas. This is about the mission and the project. And I think one of the most important things I did in moments where rejection was even a possibility, and I started to get defensive and worried, was to separate myself from the mission. When someone says they don't want to work with us, or when someone says that they want the contract that I wrote to change, or that they want the program to look differently, I could take it really personally, feel like it's a personal rejection of my ideas and what we've built, but it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the program. And what happens when you shift from this is about me to this is about the mission is you suddenly think of many other paths forward that don't have to do with you, right? It's pulling in, well, what if we brought in this person to join the team? What if we gave you an extra month? Suddenly so many more options become available. In terms of when it is a personal rejection, like, I pitch a lot. It's hard to not take, losing a pitch personally. In moments like that, I have a list of nice notes that people have written to me in the past that I always go back to. I mean, these are notes that like people wrote to me 10 years ago. And sometimes it's like, I just need to reread that and remember who I actually am, because the world is always projecting often incorrect images of who we are onto us. And we could easily believe that their projection is the right one, but we know who we are. And here's another thing for those of you in your 20s or even your teens, you don't know who you are yet. You're still on a journey. And so when someone says something that doesn't feel good, that doesn't resonate, all you have to do is say, wow, I'm grateful for that feedback because that is not who I am. I'm going to put that aside. And I have one more piece of data that's getting me closer to who I really am. As you get later into your 20s, you start to find out a little bit more of who you are, but the way you get there is by finding out who you are not. And so I definitely advise folks to not take things personally and to keep a nice list of either nice notes people have said to you or nice notes for yourself, right? As I told you earlier, I'm very, very much a supporter of having our own affirmations.
Rachel, there was a question earlier about if a student's feeling inspired, how they don't know where to begin. How do they get started?
If you're interested in starting a Swipe Out Hunger program, you should come to our session. I think it's at 3 o'clock, right? Nope, is it 2? It's at 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock Central. Join us at 2 and we'll just keep this conversation going, making it a full day of inspiration and specifically around how to start a swipe program. If you're just inspired about anything or you're inspired about another specific topic, I would start to just like have a journal where every time you're inspired, you start to take notes and you share your ideas. But what's really important about that is that thank you for sharing. I'm just keep saying join us at 2, you don't know where or what. Join us at 2 at the information in the link that Michelle just shared. But if you are feeling inspired, what's even more valuable, I'll say, than the idea that you want to put out there, it's learning what moments make you excited. Is it when you're in conversation with someone? Is it when you're reading a paper and you're like getting into the data? Is it when you're advocating for something? Is it when you're trying something new? Learning those moments about your own leadership are really important. So the moment you feel inspired, just start to journal. Like, what was I doing? What came up? How am I feeling? What am I working on? And after a month, review, and again, this could be 1 or 2 sentences. You'll be so grateful that you wrote these 1 or 2 sentences. Go back and after a month, start to look at that data and say, I am learning more about my leadership. And as opportunities present themselves, you'll be able to leverage those skills and it'll just grow from there. If you have a specific idea that you're really excited about, I would say find someone to talk to about it, right? Like the art of the cold email is what got me to where I am today, right? Every time we get a grant or something good happens, my team knows that my first question is going to be like, who wants to hear the ridiculous story of how this came to be, right? Like in an airport, waiting for something to happen, I overhear something, or I'm waiting in line at a food spot and like literally that is how everything for me has happened, and a lot of hard work, obviously. But like so much of it is seizing on those opportunities. And so if you are inspired, like start talking to people about it. Think about strategic people that you want to cold email, cold LinkedIn, whatever it might be, just to say like, never say the words pick your brain. Worst words to use in an email. I'd love to leverage your expertise in this space. You're really good at advocacy. You're really good at sales. You're really good at, do you have 20 minutes? I want to talk about this. Asking people for their time in a strategic way, just to like get your idea flowing. If you're inspired, find a person to talk to about it, to have the idea continue to live and evolve. And whether it lives or it dies, you've now had, another exercise of when an idea comes up, how does it feel to live it out into the world? Does anyone feel inspired now and want to workshop something in our next few minutes, or anyone want to jump in with like thoughts or feelings or questions?
So Rachel, I am the Vice President of Education and Advocacy for Helping Hands. It's a volunteer organization, and I just got the opportunity to become Executive Director. So now I kind of get to, steer the boat and figure out what I really want to advocate. So food insecurity is something that I really wanted to take to the next level in the organization, but I don't think we really got to do that this year. Do you have any ideas about how to expand volunteer opportunities? Because we do have, food pantries and things like that, but I'm not really sure of any other resources that are out there.
Great question. And I'll turn it back to you with the question of, if you're trying to do something to help people, the best way to do that is to better understand the problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you have hands and you want to use them to help people, find out ways that people need help. Whether that's talking to peers or people in the community that have certain challenges, or understanding what local nonprofits need. Better understanding, because right now, for instance, let's say the pantry, there's like a pantry. Does the pantry have enough volunteers? Does the pantry have enough fresh produce, right? I'm sure if you go there, there's going to be ravioli for days. Asking them what items are missing, and then launching a campaign to the Alumni Association or whoever, saying we need these kind of items for 1 month. Let's see if we can raise those items. Or is transportation an issue? Can you reach out to the local rideshare company or the university to see if they have extra buses that can help in some way? So I think as much as you can understand more of the issues and center your activism around solving problems as opposed to where you're excited, you can feel really good about the impact you can have. Is that helpful?
Yes, that is. Thank you.
I have a question if no one else has one ahead of me. Lots of times I'll hear students excited about an idea and wanting to take it somewhere, but they have a fear of public speaking. And they'll say, I'm super excited about this, but I can never talk in front of other people about it. So could you share a little bit about overcoming that kind of fear, or just being with fear, just your experience of that, and also what your thoughts are about public speaking?
Yeah, if we were in person, you would see that my hands are not shaking now because I can hold on to my arms or my desk or something. But typically in person, to this day, 10 years after doing so much public speaking, I still get shaky hands, and I have to do at least 3 minutes of deep breathing before for me to be able to speak effectively, right? Even now, I get caught up who's paying attention, and it never goes away. But what happens is that you gain confidence that you can get past it, right? Half of the fear is your constant re-questioning of am I doing this right? Are people listening? And that's a distraction. And the more you do it, the more the answer to those questions are, yeah, you're doing it fine. People are listening. And so you push past and you're confident. One technical trick I'll give you is, now that we're all doing presentations on Zoom, sneak in a video, right? When I put in that video of Emily, that was to share a video with you all, but it was also I needed a water break. I needed to take a deep breath. And so sneaking, even if you're doing in real life presentations, right? It's a way to conserve your energy, give yourself a break in the middle of the talk. But honestly, the first few times I pitched, I had a coach that recorded every single practice one I did. And it was miserable listening to myself again. But it was how I realized, I'm going on a tangent, that story wasn't even interesting. Why did I tell that story, right? So being able to record yourself, having people who love you, who will give you honest feedback is really important. All of it is about practice, and it doesn't mean practice on stage, it means practice in whatever way. And wear an outfit that feels really good. Give yourself an affirmation before, do lots of deep breathing before. There's technical ways to get over it. And then some of it is just grit and pushing yourself to do it again and again. Yeah, Michelle, I'll just add that one of my mentors has this quote where he says that charity, the way we have charity traditionally, is about the redemption of the giver and not the liberation of the receiver. We're so focused on what's going to make me feel good, what's going to make me look good in my community, what's going to make me feel, less guilty about the fact that I'm working at a financial services firm or whatever. And it's not centered on actually liberating the person we're trying to help and serve. So always asking our activism questions around, what does this person need? What does my community need? And then building our service around that.
I love that. I think, because I almost feel like part of that active service is that, yeah, at times that might make me feel a little uncomfortable because maybe I'm not comfortable with public speaking, or maybe I'm not comfortable with that ask or being able to reach out to that organization. But I really like that, just in terms of thinking about activism as problem solving. And yeah, it's almost that's part of the service, and giving back to those people is like really like what is actually needed. And it's a win-win, right? Because it'll benefit all of us if we can really actively, like you said, think of issues a little bit more broadly and try to solve the problems instead of just trying to remedy temporary situations.
Exactly. It makes all of our efforts that much more impactful because we're actually asking the right question to begin with. I know that we're coming up on time, and I would love, I know we're not in person, but I'd love to still take like a group photo. And so if anyone who wants to have their photo taken, I'll do a couple of our slides on the Zoom together. You can turn on your camera, fix your hair, reapply your chapstick. And in one sec, I'll snap a pic. 1, 2, 3. Let me take one more. 1, 2, 3. I love it. We've got another slide. I have to take one more. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you guys. I dropped my contact info below. I so appreciate anyone who spends time on a Zoom that is not a class. And I so appreciate Kathleen and Amy and Michelle and Jessica and everyone at TWU who made this possible, and your dedication, and hope that more folks join us at 2 o'clock for the session on Swipe. And if you can't make it at 2, we're going to have a quick roundup session at 3 to talk more about next steps. So yeah, you can send me or Amy a note and we'll make sure you get it. I'm going to take a screenshot of this chat and add it to my list of wonderful messages people have sent me. But yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you guys. We really appreciate your time, and we're really looking forward to where this goes here at Texas Woman. So thank you, Rachel.